Welcome. Hi, Brandon.
Hey,
By the way, those glasses, you mentioned once that each color has sort of a perk. What is the
y-
color, the perk of the color yellow?
yeah, yellow's for focus. So,
Oh, that's why you mentioned that you want to focus. Okay.
yeah, I think I've been using them um so that I have a whole set of them. So, but I've been using the yellow ones for like meetings and for the podcasts and stuff like that. Anything where I need to be locked in, zoned in, I'll put
Yeah.
them on.
Cool. What other colors do you have in your glasses arsenal?
From this set I have a rainbow actually.
A literal rainbow of colors.
Yeah, I have the Roy G Biv, and then but this actual set, these are from an experiment uh that they did to see like the maximum effect of the color and the physiological effect that they could have.
Mm.
And then once they figured out what that wavelength was, they the exact wavelength, they made these glasses that are tuned to that wavelength, and they kind of block out some other ones so it's like focused. Um Yeah, so
Okay.
there's four of those, and yellow is for focus, red is for like um what is that? Excitement, stimulation, and then like the blue ones are for like energy and the green ones are for relaxing.
Do you use any color like watching TV or when you're watching something on a screen?
No, I usually use them for meditation or anytime I'm like getting in the zone. I wouldn't watch TV with them cuz it would it would make everything look weird.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I didn't think of that. So it actually tints your vision with that
Oh
with
yeah,
that
big
color.
time. Even these yellow ones um do a pretty good job.
Do you notice an immediate difference, or it is? Do you find it is subtle? What was your first experience when you began dabbling with that?
There it depends on the color. I find that it does hit you like almost as soon as you put them on, you feel something. You're like, what is that? I don't know. Um,
Hmm.
and then as you sit with it, especially if you're kind of attuned, they kind of do their thing. Like the focus ones do really get you locked in, and I know the blue ones definitely will get you feeling a little jazzed or like perked up a little bit. And even if
Blue
you,
ones are the energy ones.
yeah, those are the ones for energy. And if you think about
Okay.
the blue lights, if you don't go to bed, you don't want to look at your screen because it'll keep you up because of blue light. So that's kind of like the same thing.
Right.
Uh,
I have a blue light blocking glasses.
right. And I have blue light letting in glasses.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It actually intensifies instead of blocking it. Is that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's going to get more in there and
yeah.
you feel alert. Um, they're pretty cool. The coolest ones are the pink ones because it's really subtle, but they will like really open up that heart energy. And
Pink ones are for, remember me again.
the pink ones are definitely like heart energy, love, all of that
Okay.
kind of compassionate area. Um, I've
I
had
I've been sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say I've been really drawn to for the last year definitely to pink and violet shades. Like in the edits I do like artwork and stuff. I always it goes from mainly blue to violet, within that range. And I've been asking myself why. I don't have an answer, but it definitely there's a pull to that range of colors, which is very interesting. I mean, I could say that they certainly have that. They provoke that sense of love and intimacy, I guess. And yeah, like for instance, when I'm coloring a photograph that I'm editing, one of the last steps is like tinting the highlights and the shadows. So something very subtle that you probably wouldn't notice unless I showed you the before and after. But the way I do it is I go through the whole range of colors, and I'll always stop. My eyes are always drawn to the violet tones, on the highlights, and even and maybe also even on the shadows, and I always stop there, and the edit is done.
Hmm. You know, you can play with that if you're interested. One of the ways you can get into like intuition and tapping into your intuition and things like that is you start to get really symbological, and you can start to see like, okay, what does that color mean? And you can just kind of go look. The internet
Mm,
is your friend in these ways,
yeah.
and you start like googling like kind of the feelings for this color or like representations of what it can mean and things like that. And then you don't do anything with that. It's not like you just let that float around and you see if any of that lands for you, or if you feel any of that.
Yeah.
Um, if you feel that's the pull or that's the direction, because maybe your subconscious is telling you something. Maybe you're moving in a direction, and that's being
I've had someone mention something about the violet, and it certainly resonated. And the way I use these things is to sort of check how I'm moving right now, and it's fun because it is, we as humans tend to like to bring out and make clear through words the internal experience, and in that regard, when you mentioned, for instance, love with your pink sunglasses, that immediately put me that immediately made me wonder that, yeah, I'm in fact in a moment of my life that I guess there's a pull to intimacy, and that sometimes is is felt or is searched for in relationships. Like being here with you, is really. I always end up the last podcast that we made, just two of us. It is really a really nice feeling that I have in the end of it, because I appreciate that connection, that intimacy, and that exchange. So yeah, I guess I lost my thread here, but basically, there's definitely that resonance with your tastes, like the colors that you like, with the way with the books you read, with everything that you do, and like, there's definitely that resonance of a deeper meaning, I find.
So like what you're talking about, using the colors and things like that to kind of capture what's happening internally. I think about build that's kind of like building your own map, right? For understanding and conceptualizing like your more inner felt sense, because that's like giving life to your inner world through using intuitive symbology and things like that, because
Mm,
um, normally, as you've been supplied by the world, you don't really have a big like words. You don't have I like to say double sided lexicon, but you don't have a lexicon that will talk about this inner world. You have words and concepts for what's out there, for people, for you have words and concepts and ideas for social dynamics, all this stuff. It's real cool stuff, real big stuff. You can get lost in that. But you don't have as much that's given to you that's about you and like what's happening in here.
mm.
And so uh most people don't even have that concept of doing that. So we're always looking out there.
How would you improve that? Like, because I completely agree, and the question that I ask myself: how would you teach people that? How would you teach kids that um form of expression in whatever form it takes?
I kind of like what you were doing. I would encourage that internal mapping. All I need to do as a teacher is to know that that's true. And
Yeah.
then to act as if that's true. And then you already know it's true. So then you can well, you might not know it, but because I'm aware of it, and it is something that it can be tuned into, you can tune into it because I'm tuned into it. And so um that is to say like kind of what you were doing right there, with the colors and stuff. I would encourage you, I would first of all, show you that dynamic that's happening. That yes, do you see how you're becoming aware of your inner world this way? You're giving light to your inner world that way. You're illuminating what's happening in here, and so that you have a better understanding and insight. The same way that you would do that into your external world by paying attention to the news or talking to friends or whatever you're doing that's helping you form a picture that's out there, and then you have all these concepts and ideas that help you formulate an understanding. We're doing the same thing inward. So I would just encourage the continual exploration. So like before, you're fumbling around in the dark and you're like, yeah, there's some colors and that might feel something, but without the inclination or the structure, it's just there. So then I can just encourage you. You're doing
Right.
what you're doing is right. Yeah, you're feeling some. You're attaching feelings to colors. You're trying to use a symbological representation of your feeling. And so yeah, I mean anything can encourage you to do that. Build your own map.
I feel that there's a longing for expression in any way it takes, and that can be beyond what we know as art. It can infuse every action, every movement that we have.
To give voice to that part of yourself. But when you were talking, I was seeing like how it's possible to not really even be aware of that desire to express that way, because you might only if the it might have only been presented to you certain avenues of expression, and so those are your only ones. You can
Mm.
talk or you could write it, or that's it. And then you don't, anything that's not captured there, you don't get to experience, or you're not aware of it. You experience it, but you're not necessarily aware of it.
There's definitely a lack of education in 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 expression, in self-expression, and transmission of what one is feeling, because things otherwise get buried so easily within the body, within the mind, that decades later you become sick, or you become, whether physically or mentally sick.
Yeah.
Those things have an impact later in life.
I feel like that's um kind of a function of society. We can only teach ourselves what we know about ourselves, and the ideas that we have about ourselves, they're just now coming to include our internal world. And now we can we can now finally act along that line when we're teaching people. But before, those ideas about who and what we are were limited. And so if you think about growing up, those children were seen as like whatever a children is, a child. It was more like the idea they should be seen and not heard, whatever, because the people who are making the it's all top level understanding. So it's only through time that we've come to really expand upon these ideas of what it means to be a human, and in that we're finally allowing the space for our more felt world, because we're not robots. You can't
Mm.
just run, go, do, just make it happen, just do this. And okay, like what about all this that's happening in here? Too bad. So when we're not giving that space, like you said, you see it come in illness, you see it come down in the body, because it gets closed off. We're so closed off from it because we're not even acknowledging that that's happening. We're just like, well, that's just some annoying feeling. I don't, you know, we're so disconnected from ourselves because we're living so top down, I would say.
Yeah.
That 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 anything that can give voice to those parts of ourselves that are just as valid, those other ways of knowing. There's so many different ways of knowing than just uh conceptual thought, like words and stuff. um Getting it in tuned with that, and then really experiencing the world that way, and then being the one that experiences the world that way, and then speaking from a place of experiencing the world that way, that felt interconnectedness. I think that's kind of where I'm headed. That's what I want to do. And that's what I want to amp the signal for, because I think that's a lot of where our pain and stuff comes from, because we're just not getting to feel all of what we are.
Mm. In your case, what is your favorite form of expression? What activity do you feel that transpires what we are talking about transpires essentially a cathartic movement that is going on within you.
Usually, music is. I like to listen to different songs, set the mood.
Mm,
Um, art. I do like to write. I wanted to say art, but art is a different thing for me. I don't know. I like to express that way, but I've never done it. I have to be in the right mood to art. I've never tried to art in the wrong mood, so I don't know. And then also, it's just gonna. This is really recently. Um, I've really been getting into like the whole meditation thing. That has been a big part of my coming to really allow myself and tune into those parts of myself that and just to let them be whatever they are, seeing them and just this non-doingness, approaching
mm,
it, getting really close, um
that's beautiful.
and letting all that just happen and giving awareness and letting that be illuminated with no particular direction as much as I can. All of that helps because I notice all of that everywhere else I go, and I'm just more aware of myself. So I love that's probably one of my biggest places right now. Um, Personally, is my practice in that area.
That's beautiful. I'm glad you mentioned meditation because here we are talking about activities of self expression, and you mentioned something that on the surface is the opposite of activity or of doing, and I love that because as much contrast it seemingly has to what we have been pointing to. Meditation is literally the, I don't want to say the highest form of self-expression, but it's certainly a tool to be celebrated because there you are doing nothing, sitting in the same place, and yet there's this quality that comes to the surface where the expression of whatever it is that wants to be expressed comes to the surface and takes the space that it wants without you asking anything back from it. So it's just purity in that sense because there's no, you don't try to make it come out, you don't try to force it. They're just I don't know. It just comes these images of being held and being loved. When you talk about that, came to mind because it can be such a beautiful practice if one is called to do it.
For me, meditation comes and goes. Like when I really get into it,
Yeah.
like I want to do it. It feels like something I should do, and I'm like yes. And then there's other times where it feels like I'm trying to force it, and then it's a nightmare.
Mm,
it's
yeah.
not it's not as enjoyable. Although part of me wants to say those are the best sits, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. Do you feel like I definitely feel that for me, there's definitely times that last, I don't know, sometimes they last 1 month, sometimes they last 1 week, but there's definitely times that I feel that I really want to meditate, whatever that is. For me, it looks like sitting in the same place and just letting whatever wants to arise and let it move as it pleases. So do you feel that for instance, you now are in your 20-day streak or whatever, how many days it is?
Yeah.
Do you feel that in all those days you have you had to make extreme effort?
Um. The lead up to doing this 21 days was like a bunch of stop start stop start stop start stop start, and then finally it
Mm,
started starting. And once I
yeah,
got going, no. And I found that I'm using the Muse, so the gamification of it, having that number pop up and say
yeah,
20, I'm like, oh, I'm actually doing pretty good. Let me keep going. So that makes it easier. I've already gotten to the point where I'm enjoying meditating. So I know if I can get still, that's great. Um, but
yeah. But I think my question is I was not very clear. I think my question is, do you have a sort of calling that makes up for that initial struggle
Oh,
to start to do it?
yes, definitely. I feel the urge. I feel the pull. Like it almost hurts. Like if I don't attend to this something, I don't know what it is, that wants me to do something, which I don't always know what that is, but I know when I'm moving in that correct direction. And for me lately, that's been meditating. Um, the inclination is there, the urge is there. Like a part of me is like, hey, there's a desire here that's like, hey, I would like to do this. And if I attend to that, then that's great. So it's like meeting, I want to do this and I'm doing it. So that feels good. That helps. Um, but I
Mm,
think the only way I was able to develop that was to see the efficacy of meditation. So that I had to start playing with it to see that, oh, this is actually kind of working. Or this is a benefit. And then that helped me want to do it more. But I don't know if
yeah.
that answers your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. Because I noticed that in my case, I normally when I want to meditate is because there's a loud factor within my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is some kind of intensity, like in sensations, or um yeah, it has always to do with intensity in some form or another, that I have the calling to, just sit. And I feel I don't really have a choice in those moments. On the other end, on times that I try to, you know because I was so into Buddhism, and you have to meditate every day to be a Buddhist. And I felt that it never sticked in a way that it was a long term thing. It was just something that I felt that I needed to do for the wrong reasons at the time,
Yeah.
and it never sticked. And what I noticed, I think what everyone is searching for, whether you are searching for, looking for meditation, or looking for, sports, or art, or whatever activity you are excited at first at doing, there's there's always the sense of lack first. Something is missing, and I want to do something to combat this sense of lack. And I feel that what for me was the wrong reasons to combat that sense of lack. I resorted to meditation and Buddhism to somehow find hope in something that that would put an end to all this suffering. So
Do you feel a do you feel there was a even a difference now in the type of in the I want to say the quality of your meditation from when you were doing it then as a Buddhist to while you're doing it now as just more like something you really want to do versus.
definitely, because the thing that produces most suffering, in my experience, is the seeking mechanism, always seeking for something. That sense of lack always on the background. So when I did meditation, and contemplation practices with that objective in the forefront, I have to find out. I have to, there's always this sense of desire, which in some, you could argue that it is a noble desire, because it has to do with practices that are historically um, designed to put an end to suffering. But I think that has to be experienced, and that has to be seen, not to work. That aspect of uh, seeking resolution is hopeless, because you are always going into it with expecting something in return, and that's not honest in my. I mean, I don't know which word to use for that, but I think honesty is a good one, because if you are expecting something in return, it's like offering a present, right? If you are giving a present to someone and you're expecting something in return, that's not really a present. A present is free of any commitment or of any expectation, and I found that ideally, that's the case with any practice that is made.
I feel like that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. That's what I want to say. To It's a lot
Absolutely.
of pressure. There's this huge desire.
That's exactly the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of pressure to put on yourself. It's like, oh, whatever it is that I am, it's gonna it's gonna be so amazing. And it's gonna
Yeah.
solve all of this. This over here is gonna be fixed by whatever I find. And it's like it's it's a lot of it's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. And I love what T.S. Eliot has to say about hope, and he essentially says he has a line in one of his poems that says, "Hope is always hope for the wrong thing." And I mean, that's when I first heard that completely, impacted me in such a way, because I saw the truth of it, and how profound it was. Everything that I hope that would fix whatever lack I was sensing would never do it, never.
Never.
And these things seem so radical, but they're just radical in contrast to your beliefs that you are holding very tightly. Because if you don't put your happiness on anything, that means that there's no thing that can take your happiness out. But if you do put your happiness on something, on an activity or whatever it is, that means that you are always a slave
Yes.
to that activity, or person, or whatever mechanism you think that will make you happy somehow.
It makes me think of being it's just like a misalignment with who you are, and where feelings come from. And if we are under the understanding that what's happening out here is impacting how what's felt in here, then we need the external to be in some sort of configuration that will generate a good response. And so um, then our happiness is very conditional, and
Mm,
uh, it can be taken away. It can you can lose it all the time. Then we get busy with maintaining it. It has to be kept. Everything needs to stay in this particular pattern, or I'm going to lose this feeling. And once you do that, you're just stuck in, like what you said. You're stuck in this push pull dynamic where that's why the suffering happens. You're so disconnected. And then the other way is to
mm.
see yourself first and find out what's happening in here first. And then the more we're focused in here, period, because you already are always, and that becomes your set point. I think it kind of takes care of itself. I don't know how to express that. Now that doesn't it won't be easy. Will not be easy. There's a lot that happens in the navigating of that, but I think switching it around so that you can kind of, the fact that you're feeling anything, and that you are anything, that becomes more of the focus first, and then there's that over there. But we're doing it the other way around, where we want all this to look a certain way so that we can feel a certain way. Then you're okay with all the feelings, all of it. Whatever feeling's happening it's just like any other feeling that's happening.
I think that's exactly the process that one has to go through, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's tailor made for you. There's no generalizing in these, in each process, each to each of our own processes. And there's no way to create a rule that works for everyone. There's definitely points and certain teachings that you can take. In my case, that they only wake up something that was really, really ripe to and
Yeah.
ready to wake up, because until then they just don't make sense, because it is not your experience at that time. So the process, it looks like very different for a lot of people. In each case, there's no path really, and that's the beauty of it, right? You have to learn and exhaust things. For me, that aspect of trying meditation, Buddhism, and so many things, that exhaustion process was vital. And in no way, when I speak of it, in no way I speak in a bad light, or say that it is bad to do that. I'm just testifying my own process, and telling a story essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about the exhaustion process. I'm a big advocate for that. Like you gotta, I like to say you gotta magic carp until you Gyarados. So you gotta like splish splash. It's a
Yeah.
Pokemon. It's a really crappy Pokemon, and it basically can't do anything. The only attack it can do is splash. Um, and you kind of have to, and splash doesn't do any damage. Anyway, you have to level it up, and it turns into this like really cool dragon. So I think you just kind of gotta struggle here and struggle there, and try this and try that, and look here and look there, and you gotta exhaust your own inquiry. You have to exhaust yourself, and find what works for you, and really you're starting to take come to be more aware of yourself in this bigger way, and so you're really learning how to connect with that and be that, and move from a place of knowing yourself here. And so what a lot of that looks like is the that inquiry, and trying this, and meditating, and all the frustration and all the suffering and all that other stuff is it's really it's always been there. You're just becoming finally more and more aware of it, and so that it can get, cleared out. I have a question for you based on what we're talking about. Do you
Mm.
think How do you feel about this? Do you think everyone is here to do all of this, to figure this out? Because some people don't seem to get on that path, and some people do.
Well, I think if I have to make a generalizing statement, it would be
Very
that
general.
that it would be that everyone is looking for the end of suffering, or
Yeah.
the end of that sense of lack that I was talking about. And how that looks for people is very personal, because, as I said, in my case, it started. I romanticized, Eastern religion in a sense. So that was my entry point to investigating suffering. But I mean, for some people, it is drugs. Some people find relief in drugs, and
Yeah.
it creates a sense of silence in their mind. And I don't think one is more noble than the other. I guess drugs can obviously cause much more issues to you and the ones around you. But my point is not about that. My point is that there's this innate sense of lack in the human condition, and each person does what they think that puts an end to that, even if it's temporary. So I wouldn't know how. Again, I wouldn't know how to say if one is more noble than the other. But it seems, in my case, it seems that that entry point of Eastern religion led me to teachings that I kept an eye on, and investigated in a way that, okay, this doesn't resonate, but it's I mean, it's not false, right? I don't feel that it is 100% true, but it's not false. So I'll keep that in mind and see if something comes up in relation to that. So that put me that sense of curiosity put me on an investigation, and that is sort of investigating suffering. And these curiosity is, I think, if there's a generalizing teaching, is if you have the curiosity, don't stop it and don't neglect it. and investigate why you suffer and the reasons why you suffer.
Eastern religion was also an entry point for me too, and I think that's interesting. I think that, especially if we're over here in the West, I think that's going to be a similar story for a lot of people, um, because you can't, until it wasn't for me personally. It wasn't until I engaged with the Eastern religions that I was able to really see what my base beliefs were, because they held up a mirror. They were, and their mirror had such a drastically different angle
Mm,
that I was able to really understand and see. Oh, if everyone around you believes these base beliefs, then you don't even really you can't see them anymore, because they're the very foundational ground you're standing on. So you can't really see them. So having some other system or belief system, um, that was different, was I was highlighting my base beliefs, and I was able to see those, and it was through that there I was able to explore. Um, and yeah, it was, a lot of it was in contrast. Oh, okay, here is this idea about this one God, and I'm over here, and this idea of separation, where their idea seems to be more one of unity. Although I guess that also just matters about how it's taught, because I get, what's been really interesting for me, and I guess I'm rambling now, is going backwards and now seeing all the interconnectedness that's in the Bible too. That's always fun too. But yes, I totally lost. I went on a tangent.
I love tangents. I mean, I'm the lord of the tangents. I never finish my point.
That's okay. I don't mind. That's a good synergy then, because I just can keep rolling. It doesn't really bother me. I don't even notice really, because I'm just on to the next part. I
Man, this podcast is so hard because it's something to come back again to the concept of expression and how to express things. Essentially, our subjects is to talk about things that are really hard to put in words. And in despite of many books being written since 5,000 years ago on these subjects, but it is something really hard to talk from experience and translate that into a landscape that makes sense. I guess it is a playground in that sense, and it's fun, but it's really hard to to express that those concepts in a way that that hopefully people resonate with them, and yeah.
that made me want to bring it all together. So then I wanted to go back to the colors we were talking about. And colors are wavelengths, so those are vibrational, appearances. When you were talking about how they could relate to a feeling, and then I'm like, your feeling's just a vibration too. So now we're talking about ineffable things and the expression of them. So I
Yeah,
definitely think we've been on brand here this whole way.
absolutely. On
um,
brand with brand.
trying to piece it all together, and really talk about this stuff, because I think what you're saying is good. There's so much here. There's so much here, and I'm touching my chest right now, and I don't just mean my chest. I mean here, as in this whole thing.
Mm,
And we give voice to so little of it, and we're part of so much of it. I think the more that we can just shine some light on this, and it can be experienced, and we can have this more in-depth and connected understanding of ourselves. I think that's the transmission. Um I think that's just a life well lived, man. Not that there's a bad way to live life, because I'm also the opinion, actually, it doesn't really matter how you're doing it, that you're doing a great job wherever you're
mm-hmm.
doing.
Yeah.
There is a great value in all walks of life, and in all appearances, and not one is unworthy of shape.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess that's a nice way to end this.
Yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Okay. If nature, well-being, and art is of your enjoyment, please come check the daily content we post at woketype.com.